What's going on, Dolphins? It is your boy Dillon, and I'm here with you today. Got a little bit to talk to you about. It's technically the last day of minicamp, but Brian Flores, Coach Flores, has canceled practice for a couple reasons. One, oftentimes you see this, Adam Gase did it, other coaches do it, around the league. They'll give their guys the last day of minicamp off, for having worked hard, the previous 2 days. And so that appears to be what's going on. Although, of course, he does also have to attend the ring ceremony for New England, up in, I believe it's in Boston. I believe it's in Boston, the ring ceremony. So yeah, he's got to go up there for that, and which makes sense. But it's cool, the Dolphins get a day off. So no practice today. But there was a report that I read that I wanted to read to you. It's got a little bit of length to it, but I want to go through it. It's by Armando Salguero of the Miami Herald. I like Armando. He's usually pretty sensible, right? Like, Omar Kelly frustrates me because, like, oftentimes he can be, like, super logical and then just say some shit that, like, completely contradicts everything he just said, and it, like, he blows my mind sometimes. It's crazy. He's entertaining, though, I suppose. But Armando's usually pretty on it, and I agree with a lot of the things that he said in this, and so I want to read it to help maybe add some more context and clarification to some of the things that I've been saying. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and we will get to it. So the article is, next for Dolphins is training camp in season that will determine a major rebuild's success, right? So I'll say a little bit about that in just a minute. Let me get through like a little bit of this. The next time the Miami Dolphins gather as a team will be in late July for the start of training camp in a 2019 season that promises to be unlike any other season in team history. This season, you will eventually see, is going to be mostly about future seasons, right? And so that's how, look, unfortunately, that's like, and like I said, that's part of my concern here, right, with some of the things that they chose to do and so on and so forth, and he touches on that. We'll get to that in a minute, but is that, unfortunately, if things don't go right in the first few years, I feel like a lot of the fan base and media and so on and so forth are going to start getting, super frustrated and impatient like they always do. I'm just going off of, history over the past 10, 12, 15 years from what I've seen and experienced. So I don't know, man. I mean, obviously we still have to wait and see how things play out. Anyway, that's not an opinion. Anyway, so that's not an opinion. Dolphins ownership has said the franchise is focused on the future. And again, I've said this many times. After Adam Gase was fired, Stephen Ross, I believe in like the first interview he did, or like the second interview, one of the two, I believe I had it in one of my videos. I have no idea which one. Anyway. So I'm pretty sure I had the interview and I put it in one of my videos. But anyway, he said something like, I hope we don't go 3-13 or what have you. But, the fact of the matter is that it could be 1, 2, or even 3 years before we're even competitive. And I paraphrased a little bit, but I mean, he said that, right? So it's definitely true. The moves of the recently completed offseason, jettisoning or losing nearly a dozen veterans and team leaders while not adequately replacing them, showed hopes are not set on 2019 excellence. And even the opening of a new training camp site and other aesthetic changes are planned for beyond 2019. So the Dolphins are looking to a brighter future. And that begs the question, how are they going to get there? More importantly, who is going to help get them there? Well, that's where 2019 serves a purpose, right? And so that's what I'm saying. Like, I think that, but again, this plays into why I think a regime should have the, a 5-year window, and because they need to be judged on this year's draft, next year's draft, the year after that, right? And see if they can, put it together. I think that they, again, you guys know my opinion and my perspective. I think that they mishandled it. You know, I don't think the draft was terrible overall, but I would have done it, you know, vastly different. Again, just real quick, I would have gotten the top offensive lineman in the draft in round 1. Well, first of all, I would have kept Ryan Tannehill, not taken Ryan or signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. I would have taken the top offensive lineman in round 1. I would have kept Juwan James, and then I would have taken a defensive lineman in round 2, not traded for Josh Rosen, and then gotten Will Grier in the 3rd. And then I'd get another quarterback in the 3rd or later, maybe like the 4th next year, and then another quarterback every year. I do not advocate for chasing quarterbacks, for taking quarterbacks in rounds 1 or 2. I do not advocate for trading away draft capital for a guy, no matter how it is, no matter whether it's, you know, you trade up a few spots or 10 spots in the draft to go get a dude that year, or, you know, even like what we did with Josh Rosen, giving away a 2nd and a 5th and whatever. Like, I disagree with that, right? So like that, but that's my perspective. That's how I would have done it. So they have an opportunity to see if their decisions can bear out and prove to be fruitful. And so that's, you know, kind of what he's talking about. And this, you know, like, see, and that's the thing, right? So like, same thing with Adam Gase. When he came in, it was something like that, but he unexpectedly went 10-6 and took us to the playoffs. And so then after that, everybody put so much you know, hype and expectation on him that when there was a down season the next year and then the following year, because of a whole bunch of mess of things he couldn't control, people got all super impatient and then he got fired, right? So it's super important that Brian Flores is given the time, even if it's rough for a couple years, and we should expect that and not expect excellence immediately. And if for some reason, you know, some miracle, he, you know, makes magic and makes it happen, let's not then, you know, place all kinds of unreasonable expectations and say, you know, whatever. Anyway, and a little, see, and another part of my frustration is a little bit that has already happened, because they started, you know, saying he's the perfect fit and all these other crazy things, like, you know, that, and some people were taking it like super, like, you know, anointing him this, that, and the other. And I calm down with that, right? Anyway, think of the coming season as a bridge to the future, and what happens on that bridge will help determine who makes it to the other side of the current rebuild. That leads us directly to the Dolphins roster. There's 90 players on it today. It's going to be interesting to see how many of those players are around 1 year from now. Very interesting. Because on an overview of that unremarkable roster suggests the number will be shockingly low. And that's the thing is if they're not able to actually, you know, find guys that are worth retaining and so on and so forth, so they can build, you know, and that's why, you know, a strong, you know, roster, both youthful and, you know, with veteran leadership and stuff, then, you know, and they just turn a bunch of guys over each year, then that's not going to help the case either, right? And so that's part of why I did not advocate for the massive purge. I definitely would have kept Cam Wake and, you know, maybe Juwan James for sure. Those two guys without question, right? But, you know, I obviously don't make the decisions there. There are maybe 17 offensive and defensive players currently on the Miami Dolphins who seem certain of being with the team just 1 year from now. Obviously, more might survive, but they must do so by playing themselves into that extended tenure. They are not currently certain of being back beyond 2019. Consider. New Dolphins coach Brian Flores doesn't love the idea of his team announcing cornerstone players. That team might have cornerstones, but Flores doesn't love the idea of saying so. So ask him about left tackle Laremy Tunsil, who seems to be an excellent candidate for cornerstone status, and Flores treads carefully. I think I'm measured when I talk about everyone, the coach said. It's not specific to Laremy. He's a really good player. I'm looking forward to working with him. I try not to put labels on players. That's where I'm at with him. That's where I'm at with everyone. So, I get it. I get that, you know, I do get that approach. It's being cautious, and, you know, I venture to guess that's something he learned in New England and so on and so forth, and that's great. But, you know, like I said, for me, the philosophy for an organization should be build through the draft and supplement in free agency, right? And when you have guys like, let's say, Xavier Howard and Laremy Tunsil that are cornerstones, you know, I wouldn't say like, you know, be boisterous with it and just be over the top or crazy. You know, you don't have to, you know, whatever be said, but you know, do it just in your actions, right? You don't got to be like saying he's the best of the best and blah, 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 talking him up, you know, but just at least follow through with your actions, right? So like with Xavier Howard, they locked him up. That's wonderful, because that's what they should do, because he is a cornerstone of this team. Now look, I mean, the cap goes up every year, right? Historically, right? And it's projected to go up again next year and the year after. And so, first of all, we're going to have tons of cap space. But look, when you have those guys, look, not every guy that you bring in, you know, or that you draft is going to make it to superstar status. But when you get those cornerstone guys, and when you get those few that end up being superstars, you pay them and you lock them up for their prime, right? You take their rookie contracts to evaluate them and see if they're going to be worth it, and then you pay them accordingly, right? If they're superstars, you pay them like superstars. If they're, you know, backups, you pay them as backups, and you keep them around though, and you try and build that cohesiveness, that chemistry, and so on and so forth. And then, you know, like I said, you bring in, you know, veteran guys, you know, stopgap guys on maybe 1 or 2 year deals to just supplement through free agency to bring in a little bit more veteran leadership and so on and so forth. But you want to continuously build through the draft. And so, you know, like I said, I certainly don't have any problem with the fact that he's not like saying a lot about it. I respect that, and I get that. That makes sense to me. And as long as they continue to do things like making sure they pay, like they need to, this upcoming year, this next offseason is when they need to pay Laremy Tunsil. It's like I said, man, I've been saying for a while, since months before they paid Howard, I was like, look, one of the big keys for me this offseason, there were 2 things that were major keys. How they handled the draft, I think that they mishandled it, but and you know, I would have just done it differently, but I still thought the draft was all right overall. So I'm not like for me, they get like a C, maybe like a B, like a low B for a grade. I think I said that. I think I don't know, something like that, right? So like a B. And the other thing was make sure you lock up Xavier and Howard, and they did that, and they get definitely an A+ for sure for that. And look, I mean, he's the highest paid corner though, so I mean, their actions, but that's good because he's gonna be a cornerstone player for sure. Minkah, more than likely, when he gets to that point, Minkah Fitzpatrick is gonna be another guy, right? So we'll see. You know, other guys like Kenyon Drake, I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Right now, I wouldn't pay him, you know, as the top running back in the league. Hell no, you know, but maybe like top 15 or something like that. Sure. You know, top 10, maybe. He has to show more, I think, but also they got to use him right. And I think that they did use him right last year, especially with the way that the offensive line got battered up and so on and so forth. I thought it was smart to run Frank Gore hard up the middle and so on and so forth. You know, the power run, do the shit he's good at and get you those positive yards. And every once in a while he breaks one too. And then Kenyon Drake used a little bit more often in the passing game. Anyway, we'll see how that goes. Despite Tunsil's contract status, which only stretches his time in Miami to the end of 2020, it's logical to believe he will be a Dolphin for many years. And that makes him unique because he's probably the only player on offense with that certainty. Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. So they need to next season, because they exercised his 5th-year option. So, and I was saying around the same time as I was talking about, or during the same time I was talking about all the Xavier Howard stuff, that they need to lock up Tunsil next year, this next offseason. When I got the news that they exercised his 5th-year option, I was like, perfect, great. Right, because you do want to stagger it a little bit, right? You know, if you can, right? So and obviously, you know, it's usually like that because you're not going to get multiple stars in the same draft very often. So, that's good, right? So, and like Bobby McCain's locked up as our slot corner, and that's where he needs to play because that's his best position. Anyway, so they need to keep doing that. So the Dolphins have one cornerstone player on offense. Everyone else seems on a year-to-year basis, and even the list of offensive players certain to be on the team beyond this year is short. That list is of probable 2019 survivors includes running back Kalen Ballage, receiver Kenny Stills, third-round pick and offensive lineman Michael Dieter, and perhaps lower 2019 picks such as tackle Isaiah Prince and running backs Myles Gaskin and Chandler Cox. Assuming the rookies are at least able backup special teams or practice squad players. Ballage is on the list because despite some struggles catching the football this offseason, he's starting his second NFL season, and players on rookie contracts are bargains. Same with Prince, Gaskin, Cox, Dieter, who are rookies, right? But that's why, for the most part, you just got. It's not about where you pick, but how you pick, right? And so you just got to pick smart, and you get a fresh class every year of a bunch of dudes, and that's why you have 90. And so you just get the best ones every year, and slowly but surely over the years, you get the right guys at the right positions, and then so that position's good and taken care of. Now you focus on other ones a little bit more, and then you find those guys, right? And you keep cycling them through, over the years, and that's how you build sustainable success. Stills, who is a starter, has been productive and is signed through 2020 when he will be 28 years old, so he sticks. Makes sense, though. And now you're wondering about running back Kenyon Drake. He has been productive, but he's unsigned after this season and seemingly headed to unrestricted free agency. Same with receiver Jakeem Grant. Both players are great values on their rookie contracts, but 2019 will determine whether Miami brings them back on bigger contracts. That's absolutely correct. I totally agree with that. Like I said just a minute ago, I think Kenyon Drake definitely has to show a lot this year and more. I think he's shown, I think he's close. I think he's definitely close. I think it's likely if they sign him back, it'll be maybe like a 2-3 year deal, and it won't, like I said, it'll be maybe like top 15-ish or whatever, status. Jakeem Grant, I think he has he poor dude, but part of the reason why I love him is because he's always, I relate to this a lot, and he's just always got shit working against him, right? So, all throughout his college career, then he gets picked by us, I think, in the 5th round. He had those struggles early on, dropping the ball, in returns or whatever. He finally, a year or two, he got that under wraps, started coming in the offense more once. And then last year, until him and, God knows, everybody else got injured, he was lighting it up, right? And, I thought it was unfortunate he got the injury, but, and it sucks because he is going to be one of those guys where it's like, but I think him and Albert Wilson, which he talks about a little bit in a second, are guys that should stick around because, one, they're not all that expensive, and even if you extend Grant and even Wilson, they're not going to be paid number one receiver kind of money, right? You could probably work out decent deals with them, especially if you get them to believe, right? And this is part of the culture thing and so on and so forth, and building the chemistry with and relationships with the coaches. If you believe that, you guys are building something special, right, then they'll be, more willing to stay there, right? That's why, I said it was a big deal when Albert Wilson tweeted out after Gase got fired, man, if he would have just given us another year to show what a genius he is, man, because he really could, I believe, have done some beautiful things, and I think he's still gonna, whatever. But anyway, so I think those two guys should stick around, because they provide certain dynamics to the team. You got your Tyreek Hill and aspect of your squad, right? And then, but we do need the bigger receiver. That's why hopefully Devontae Parker can. But honestly, for me, I'm really hoping that Preston Williams outshines Devontae Parker. And also, there was another quick side note, another article I saw about, the title was Death, Taxes, and June Dominance dominance by Devontae Parker. I mean, and that's the truth, man, is unfortunately, you know, we keep every offseason so far, it's been, oh, he's killing it. But then when the season comes around, it's like, oh, sorry, he fades off. And, you know, it's a lot been part of injuries, and in large part because of injuries. And he said, as he says every season, oh, I can play, but, you know, I just need to be healthy. Well, that's a lot on him. You know, he's got to take care of his body right and be a professional and want to do it, you know, so on and so forth. And there were a lot of indications that he was moving and trending in the right directions in a lot of those areas, but he still has yet to show it. And that's why personally I would have let him go and gone a different direction in that regard. But I'm hoping that Preston Williams steps up and can take that role. Bryce Butler is a bigger body too, and he's like a good, you know, he's not superstar great, but he's good to have around to help complement that group. And then if Preston Williams can take over, then they should, you know, get rid of Devontae Parker, in my opinion. And it sucks to say that because, again, I wanted him in that draft as our #1 pick. I was super excited when we got him. I have his jersey. I want the best for the kid, but I just don't think it's going to be here. Anyway, moving on. Receiver Albert Wilson. He proved last year that he's a playmaker, but he lasted only 7 games before injuring his hip, and he's still not 100%, which is why he missed the entire offseason program and camps. So in 2019, he has to regain his health, prove he's the same player, and can stay healthy. That is absolutely true. And unfortunately, you know, those two guys, Grant and Wilson, they did sustain potentially devastating injuries, right? So, you know, obviously they have some of the best doctors and get some of the best treatment and so on and so forth. They're both really hard workers and trained, so on and so forth too. And Grant's already back out there and looks like he's getting close. But now they do have injuries, and pretty substantial ones for their position. A hip injury for a wide receiver and a foot injury. I don't think it was an Achilles tear, but I think he did have a pretty substantial injury to his Achilles. It was something in his foot, and those are big deals, especially for guys who rely on their speed because they're not super big, right? So you know, they unfortunately, again, you know, I think it sucks because they're put in that position where they really have to prove themselves, even though I think that, like, you know, they are. But in this case, I will say it is fair that they at the very least have to prove that they can get healthy and still perform, you know, close to what they used to be or what they used to perform at, right? Receiver Devontae Parker should be a cornerstone player based on his 2015 first-round draft status, but he's basically playing on a 1-year prove-it contract because he hasn't performed to expectations the past 4 seasons. If Parker plays well, he will make it to 2020 with the Dolphins. If not, he won't. Facts. And honestly, I don't think he will. That's just my perspective and my prediction, but we'll see. Tight ends Mike Gesicki and Durham Smythe are attractive to keep because they're in their 2nd season, so they remain bargains beyond the season, but both nonetheless have to play better this year to assure staying in Miami even for 2020. That is definitely true, and I hope that they do. Smythe's really good in blocking and you know, decent at catching passes, and Gesicki's supposed to be the big body, you know, go up and get it, you know, whatever. I hope he doesn't turn into the tight end of the Devontae Parker of tight ends for us, because we've desperately needed one for so long, and he really excited me. He broke like some combine records, I think, or whatever, I don't know, but he definitely put up impressive numbers, and same in college, and he showed some great things on tape, and I hope he can, you know, flourish. I know it's tough the first year, you know, definitely for tight ends. So, you know, and it's only his 2nd year. So for me, he definitely has the benefit of the doubt, but I hope those two guys can work out, because I think they could be not necessarily cornerstones, right? Like they're not going to be, you know, Xavier Howards of their position, right? But they're going to be, you know, guys that you can keep around throughout their, you know, rookie contracts, and then extend them and keep them around as, you know, solid players, or, you know, whatever, rotational guys, what have you, you know, in the room, if you don't manage to find, you know, that superstar or what have you, right? On the offensive line, veteran Daniel Kilgore is a consummate veteran. He's a starter. He knows the position. He's solid. But Kilgore must stay healthy. He didn't last year, and perform well because he'll be 32 and in the final year of his contract next year, which could tempt the Dolphins to find someone younger and cheaper, which they should. And again, this is why I thought, but I advocated for keeping him and Sitton this year as, bridge guys, veterans, solid veterans that can play well. I think Sitton actually ended up retiring. But anyway, keep those guys around because, and keep James for sure because he's still young and in his prime and one of the bookends, because now we're like super thin. We don't know, what we're going to have, and we don't, it's just, to me, the offensive line is still super shaky. Like, I thought we were finally getting it together last year. Now it's just like complete reset. And I personally believe they have, just did not address it anywhere close to adequately this offseason by letting James and Sitton go. Asiata's gone. I think one or two other guys as well. And the guys they brought in are not impressive. Even Michael Dieter, the 3rd round pick, is not, impressing. And, it could be a project, and maybe he will, maybe he won't. Who knows? But damn it, they could have gotten Garrett Bradbury in the 1st round. They could have gotten Daniel Kilgore's, heir apparent. They could have gotten the guy, that's going to be, at the center position for years to come with Laremy Tunsil. And imagine if we would have had Laremy Tunsil, Garrett Bradbury, and Juwan James. God damn it, then we'd be looking pretty damn good across that offensive line going into this year, and actually could maybe have some, reasonable expectations for success. And then if you kept Ryan Tannehill over Ryan Fitzpatrick, far more proven, far more consistent, holds so many records. Ryan Fitzpatrick, if anything, holds the record, holds a record for number of teams. I don't know if that's true. I don't think it is, but he's been on probably as many teams as Ryan Tannehill holds records for the Dolphins, right? And then again, not Josh Rosen, but get Will Greer in the 3rd. Man, God, I'd have been loving that. That'd have been great. Anyway, that's not the situation. Starting right guard Jesse Davis is a restricted free agent in 2020, so the Dolphins will be able to keep him if they choose. But that choice will depend on how well Davis plays, either as a guard or a tackle, both in 2019. And again, I talked about that. They're moving Jesse Davis, I think, is a solid right guard, but last year he showed some vulnerabilities, especially when you don't have solid guys around him. And now they're moving him at right tackle because they don't think that the guys that they have are going to be capable of playing right tackle. I'm telling you, man, unfortunately, this is my perspective, and it has to play out, and they could surprise, but I think this offensive line is going to end up being a mess. And then with Ryan Fitzpatrick and or Josh Rosen back there, quarterback play is going to be a mess, and then it's just going to end up being a disaster for the offense. That's what I think. Unfortunately, I hope to God that they prove me wrong, but we'll see. At quarterback, everyone understands there is no permanence guaranteed to anyone. Not for 36-year-old Ryan Fitzpatrick, nor 22-year-old Josh Rosen. This season will determine if either stays around for 2020. And if they don't, or, whatever, then, again, I just feel like it would have ended up being a waste. But anyway, the defense has several more players than the offense who are likely to be on the team beyond this year. That defensive list: cornerback Xavier Howard, defensive back Bobby McCain, makes sense. Defensive back Minka Fitzpatrick makes sense. Defensive lineman Devad Godshaw and Vincent Taylor makes sense. Linebackers Charles Harris, Raekwon McMillan, and Jerome Baker all make sense. And obviously the rookies from this year's draft, Christian Wilkins and Andrew Van Ginkel, makes sense, right? Now, I think that the defense is actually built pretty solid. I'm definitely curious to see how the scheme's going to play out and so on and so forth, and how they're attacking. But I think that, God damn it, man, if they can just get the offense right, which I think they took major steps back in this offseason and didn't take hardly really any steps forward, frankly, if I'm being honest with you guys. And I think the offense is severely going to kill us this season and potentially going forward. I think the defense is going to play great because I do think Brian Flores and, the staff that he brought over from New England and got from other places, I think that they are going to make the defense great. But look, as much as defense may win championships, you can't win any games if you can't score points, and I fear and have concerns, whatever, that is going to end up being the case. Worse than even the past couple years potentially, and that's why I think that there's a high probability we might not even win we might win 3 games. Unfortunately, I mean, we're going to end up having a pretty tough schedule, I'm pretty sure too, even though generally I don't take too much stock into that because you never know what happens, but just preliminary looking at it, I think it's going to be tough. Howard and probably Fitzpatrick are cornerstone players for Miami, as I mentioned earlier. That's where it begins on defense, but there's uncertainty beyond those two, and even within the group mentioned in the paragraph above. Akeem Spence, Eric Rowe, Tank Carradine, Nate Orchard, Adolphus Washington are all on one-year deals or in the final year of their contracts, so 2019 is a tryout season if they even make the team. Former Pro Bowl player Rashad Jones, he will be 32 in 2020, and the Dolphins will be able to save up to $11.5 million in cap space by simply cutting him. Uncertainty. TJ McDonald, he's a starter right now, but he and Jones might have to divide the work at strong safety this season. So if Jones stays next year, the Dolphins would need an alternate plan for keeping McDonald and his $7.6 million cap cost, or they might just jettison him. And yes, the Dolphins' depth at strong safety now is good, but expensive. Maybe too expensive. That is true. It is definitely good. But see, that's why you build in the draft and you get a safety to work up behind them. So then, whatever. TJ McDonald, I like the idea of getting rid of more just because we drafted Jones, and I'd like to see Jones retire as a Dolphin, as I mentioned before, right? But they do, their safeties, their salaries are substantial, and especially Jones is getting older and so on and so forth. I mean, they're both getting older, obviously, but Jones is about to be 32, whatever, like he said. So, like I said, I can understand, but I would just try and find a middle ground with him until he's ready to retire, because, I mean, they're definitely going to have cap space for it. So, unless he demands something absurd, then I would try and work it out so he could retire as a Dolphin. And, like I said, I think unquestionably they could have made it work with Cameron Wake, and they should have. I'm just absolutely disappointed, in that move. Anyway, linebacker Kiko Alonso, the coaching staff really, really likes him. He's starting. He's good for 2019, but 2020 is the first year his contract allows for a significant cap savings, $6.4 million, if he's cut. So Alonso's play this season has to convince the team he's more valuable than any potential 2020 cap savings. I think as of right now he is. We'll have to wait and see. I do think it is fair to say with him it is year to year, but as of right now I think it is, and we'll see how he plays this year. The Dolphins have 10 defenders and perhaps 7 offensive players who could be considered certainties for the 2020 roster. They have 2 cornerstone players in Tunsil and Howard, and maybe 3 if one adds Minkah Fitzpatrick, around which the team can build. No wonder 2019 is a rebuilding year. So look, like I said, I mean, there's a lot of good context and perspective and stuff in there for you, and I wanted to talk about it and break it down a little bit because I thought it was really good, and he pointed out a lot of good stuff. And yes, I mean, at the end of the day, it does back up a lot of what I'm saying, but again, I care about the facts, and so, I do tell you guys about, things even if they don't, back up, the things that I have to say. But in this case, I did want to, because, I mean, I guess at the end of the day, like, I get it. Like, it helps, it helps sometimes maybe to get a different perspective from another person. And that's part of why I do what I do and make the videos and do my channel, because, I say things that, a lot, and give perspectives that a lot of people don't give. Most people don't give, right? So it's different, and it's, to me, it's helpful to have different perspectives, ones that you agree with, ones that you don't agree with, so you can take all of that and put it all together in your ball of context, so that way, your ball of context and facts and data, and then you take that and you apply logic and reason to it, and you come out, you know, with the best reasonable, most logical, most efficient results and answers, and so on and so forth. That's what I try to do. Obviously nobody's perfect and I make mistakes, and you know, if I ever do, you know, point it out, correct me. It's happened plenty of times and I appreciate it. You know, I appreciate you guys getting my back when I am factually incorrect. You know, but I like to you know, I like that I'm, you know, able to give a different perspective than what, you know, the vast majority of people are saying. So anyway, with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get out of here. I hope you guys enjoy my videos and like that perspective. If you do, make sure you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the like button, make sure you hit the bell if you want to get the alerts. Leave your questions, comments, and concerns down in the comment section. And as always, make sure you follow me on Twitter at Dillon Tartaro. And with that, I am out. I'll see y'all soon. Fins up.